The sound of paper sliding across polished marble was so quiet that anyone walking past the penthouse kitchen might have missed it. But to Isabella, it sounded like the end of 10 years. The divorce papers stopped in front of her. A black fountain pen landed beside them. Adrian didn't even look at her. He stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, one hand in his pocket, admiring the New York skyline below. His perfectly tailored suit looked as expensive as the apartment itself. "Sign it." His voice was calm, cold, like he was ending a business contract instead of a marriage. Isabella looked down at the papers but didn't touch them. She slowly raised her eyes. "Our 10th anniversary is next week." For just a second, the room became quiet. Then laughter filled the penthouse, not Adrian's. A young woman stepped out from the balcony carrying a glass of champagne. Long blonde hair, designer dress, perfect makeup, perfect smile. Or at least, the kind of smile that enjoyed someone else's pain. "Oh, she's still talking about anniversaries," Tiffany said with a laugh. "That's adorable." She walked straight to Adrian and slipped her arm around his. He didn't pull away. Instead, he kissed her forehead, right in front of his wife. Isabella felt something crack inside her, not her heart, that had been breaking for months. This was the last piece finally falling apart. "I thought we agreed she would be gone before breakfast," Tiffany said. Adrian sighed. "I wanted to give her one last chance to make this easy." He finally looked at Isabella. "There isn't much to discuss. My lawyers have already prepared everything." He tapped the papers. "You leave with the Honda. You leave with your clothes. And you leave with the monthly support listed in the agreement." His mouth curled into a small smile. "It's more money than you've ever earned anyway." Tiffany laughed again. "I told you she married rich because she couldn't survive on her own." Isabella didn't answer. She simply looked at the man she had loved for 10 years. She barely recognized him anymore. There had been a time when Adrian couldn't afford rent. A time when they shared one tiny apartment with second-hand furniture. A time when they ate instant noodles 3 nights a week because they were saving every dollar for his dream. Back then, he used to hold her hand every night. Back then, he used to promise he would never change. Now he couldn't even meet her eyes for more than a few seconds. "You've been unhappy for a long time," Isabella said softly. "No." Adrian shook his head. "I've been embarrassed." The words landed harder than any slap. "You still wear old clothes. You drive that ancient Honda. You clip coupons. My business partners think I'm married to someone who has no ambition." Tiffany smirked. "He needs someone who actually fits his life." Adrian nodded without hesitation. "I've worked too hard to build this empire. I need a wife who looks like success." Silence filled the room. Isabella lowered her head. Not because she was ashamed, because she was trying very hard not to cry. She had hidden so much from him. Not because she was dishonest, because she wanted someone to love her, not her family, not her name, not her money, just her. She had believed Adrian was that man. She had been wrong. Adrian checked his watch. "I have a board meeting in an hour, so either sign now or my lawyers will make this much more expensive." Before Isabella could answer, another voice interrupted. "Sir." Everyone turned. One of the security guards stood near the entrance. He looked nervous, very nervous. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "There are several black vehicles outside." Adrian frowned. "So?" "They're asking for Mrs. Sterling." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Probably debt collectors." The guard swallowed. I don't think so. They said they represent a foreign government." Adrian laughed. "A foreign government?" He looked at Isabella. "Is there something you forgot to tell me?" Isabella remained silent. The guard continued. "They refused to leave. They said they will only speak to Mrs. Sterling." Adrian shrugged. "Fine. Send them away." The guard didn't move. "They won't leave," they said. His voice almost disappeared. "They said they are here for Her Royal Highness." The room became completely silent. Tiffany burst into laughter. "Oh, this is rich. Your Highness?" She looked at Isabella's faded gray cardigan and old shoes. "Did you hire actors?" Adrian smiled. "This is getting pathetic." He walked toward Isabella. "If this is your attempt to stop the divorce, it ends now." He grabbed the papers and placed them directly in front of her again. "Sign them." Instead, someone knocked. 3 slow, powerful knocks. Not the kind made by a visitor. The kind made by someone who expected the door to open. Immediately. The security guard looked terrified. "They're coming in." Before Adrian could answer, the penthouse doors opened. 4 men in dark suits entered first. Every movement was calm, disciplined, professional. Behind them walked an older woman wearing a navy blue suit with a silver brooch shaped like a crown. She looked directly at Isabella. Without saying a single word, she bowed. Every security officer behind her bowed at exactly the same moment. The room froze. The woman spoke clearly. "Your Royal Highness, the aircraft is ready. We've come to take you home." The color drained from Adrian's face. Tiffany's champagne glass slipped from her hand. It shattered across the marble floor. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Adrian stared at Isabella. "What?" His voice barely worked. "Did she just call you?" Isabella slowly stood. She looked at Adrian one last time. There was no anger in her eyes, only disappointment. "I hoped," she spoke quietly, "you would never have to find out this way." Then she turned toward the woman. "I'm ready." As she walked forward, the older woman gently placed a velvet case into Isabella's hands. Inside was a sapphire brooch surrounded by diamonds. The moment Isabella pinned it onto her cardigan, every guard stood even straighter. Outside, police sirens echoed through the streets. Helicopters circled above the building. News vans began arriving one after another. This was no ordinary visit. Something much bigger had just begun. Adrian stood frozen, his mouth opened, but no words came out. The room that had belonged to him only minutes ago suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. The woman in the navy blue suit stepped closer to Isabella. "Your Highness, we need to leave immediately. The press has already learned you are here." Isabella nodded. "I understand." Tiffany finally found her voice. "This has to be a joke." She forced a laugh. "Adrian, tell them to stop." Nobody answered her. The security officers didn't even look in her direction. Their attention never left Isabella. Adrian took one slow step forward. "Who are you?" The woman turned toward him. "I am Lady Catherine Beaumont, Lord Chamberlain of the royal household of House Valois." She reached into a leather folder. "We were hoping this meeting would happen under happier circumstances." She placed several documents on the kitchen island. Each carried heavy wax seals, gold emblems, official signatures. Adrian stared at them. His heartbeat grew faster. "This is impossible." Lady Catherine looked at him calmly. "No, Mr. Sterling. The impossible part is that Her Royal Highness managed to hide her identity from the entire world for 10 years. She turned to Isabella. "Your grandmother has been informed. Her Majesty requests your immediate return to France." Isabella smiled gently. "I'll be there tonight." Adrian shook his head over and over. "No, this doesn't make sense. You told me your parents died when you were young." "They did," Isabella answered quietly. "My parents died. My grandmother raised me." Adrian frowned. "You never said she was—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "A queen?" Isabella asked softly. "No, I never did." The silence became unbearable. Then Adrian remembered something. 10 years earlier, the expensive schools, the fluent French, the perfect manners, the strange phone calls she always took in private, the elegant older people who occasionally sent handwritten letters. He had never asked questions. He had assumed she came from an old family with good manners. Nothing more. His knees suddenly felt weak. Tiffany stepped forward. "If she's really a princess." She looked around nervously. Why was she clipping coupons? Lady Catherine smiled. "Because Her Royal Highness wished to marry a man who loved her, not her title, not her family, and certainly not her wealth." The words hit Adrian harder than anything else. His mind raced back through 10 years of memories. The old Honda, the simple clothes, the homemade dinners, the birthday gifts that cost almost nothing. She had never been saving money. She had been protecting her heart. Adrian whispered. "You tested me." Isabella slowly shook her head. "No, I loved you. There was never a test. I simply believed love should exist without power." She looked into his eyes. "You proved me wrong." Adrian reached toward her. "Bella." She stepped back. It was only one step, but it felt like an ocean. At that exact moment, Adrian's phone began ringing. He ignored it. It rang again, then again, then again. Finally, he answered. "What?" The voice on the other end sounded panicked. "Where are you?" It was his chief financial officer. You need to get to headquarters immediately. Adrian frowned. I'm busy. No, you're not. You have a bigger problem. Our stock just dropped 12% in 7 minutes. Adrian laughed in disbelief. That's impossible. The market thinks Sterling Dynamics is connected to an international royal scandal. Every financial news network is reporting it. Adrian slowly lowered the phone. Another notification appeared, then another, then another. Every major business channel carried the same breaking headline. Tech billionaire files for divorce, wife revealed as European princess. Another headline appeared seconds later. Royal household confirms identity of Princess Isabella. Then another. Investors demand emergency board meeting. Adrian's face turned pale. Tiffany grabbed his arm. Tell me this isn't real. He couldn't, because deep inside, he already knew it was. Outside, the sound of helicopter blades grew louder. Reporters filled the street below. Camera flashes lit up the windows like lightning. Lady Catherine looked toward Isabella. The motorcade is secure. We should leave. Isabella nodded. She picked up only one thing from the kitchen. A small framed photograph. It showed Adrian and Isabella standing beside their tiny first apartment 10 years earlier. They were smiling. They looked happy. She stared at it for a few seconds, then she placed it back on the counter. Some memories were better left behind. Without another word, she walked toward the door. Every royal guard stepped aside to clear her path. As she reached the hallway, dozens of reporters shouted questions from below. Your Highness, did your husband know who you were? Is the royal family planning legal action? Will there be an official statement? Isabella never answered. She simply walked forward with quiet dignity. Inside the penthouse, Adrian remained standing exactly where she had left him. For the first time in his life, the richest man in the room had never felt so powerless. The royal aircraft lifted into the night sky. For the first time in 10 years, Isabella looked down at the city that had once been her entire world. New York, the place where she met Adrian. The place where she built a life far away from palaces, cameras, and royal ceremonies. She rested her head against the window. She wasn't thinking about the money. She wasn't thinking about the title. She was thinking about the man she used to love, the man who once held her hand while they walked through the streets with no security, no fame, and no luxury. She remembered when Adrian had nothing, and she remembered the promise he made. I don't care about a woman's name or family. I only care about who she is. Those words had stayed with her for years, until they didn't. Lady Catherine sat across from her. Are you certain you want to continue with the legal action? Isabella looked up. Yes, but not because he hurt me, because thousands of people trusted that company. Employees, investors, families. If people abuse that trust, there must be consequences. Lady Catherine nodded. Your grandmother will be proud. Isabella looked away. I don't want her to be proud because I won. I want her to be proud because I stayed true to myself. Several hours later, the aircraft landed in France. The doors opened. A line of royal guards stood waiting. Beyond them was a massive stone palace surrounded by gardens and fountains. The Palace of Valois. Isabella stepped onto the runway. For the first time in years, she was home. Waiting at the entrance was an elderly woman wearing an elegant blue coat. Despite her age, her presence filled the entire area. Queen Genevieve Valois. The moment Isabella saw her grandmother, she stopped. The queen opened her arms. Isabella walked forward and hugged her. No cameras, no reporters, no business meetings, just family. You look tired, the queen said softly. Isabella smiled. I feel tired. Good. The queen raised an eyebrow. Good? Yes. Because only someone who has truly cared can feel that kind of pain. They walked through the palace halls together. For the first time, Isabella removed the simple cardigan she had worn for years. She changed into a royal gown, not because she needed to prove anything, because she no longer needed to hide. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Adrian sat alone inside his penthouse, the same place where he had handed Isabella divorce papers. But everything felt different now. The apartment was silent, too silent. His phone continued to ring. He ignored every call. The news was everywhere. Sterling Dynamics investigation expands. Former CEO Adrian Sterling faces board challenge. Royal family confirms Princess Isabella's identity. He turned off the television. But the silence was worse. For the first time in years, he had no meeting. No investors, no employees waiting for instructions, no one asking him for decisions. Only memories. He walked into the kitchen. The same kitchen where Isabella used to cook dinner. He opened a cabinet. Inside was a small container. A handwritten label was attached. Adrian's favorite cookies. He stared at it. She had made them weeks before he asked for the divorce. She still loved him, even when he was already leaving her. His phone rang again. This time he answered. It was his assistant. Mr. Sterling. Her voice sounded nervous. What? The board released a statement. Adrian closed his eyes. Read it. She hesitated. They said the company is entering a leadership transition. He laughed quietly. Leadership transition. A polite way of saying he was gone. There is something else. What? The board has requested that you return all company property. Adrian looked around the penthouse. Everything around him suddenly felt temporary. The apartment? His assistant became quiet. Yes, the board owns the building through company assets. Adrian stood up. They're taking my home? No, she corrected softly. They're taking the home that belonged to the company. The same words he had used against Isabella came back to him. You leave with the Honda. You leave with your clothes. Now the world was giving him the same treatment. The next morning, Adrian arrived at Sterling Dynamics headquarters. But for the first time in 10 years, he didn't walk through the executive entrance. A security guard stopped him. Sorry, sir. Adrian stared. You don't recognize me? The guard looked uncomfortable. I know who you are. Then move. The guard shook his head. I can't. Your access has been removed. Adrian stood there, outside the building he had created, unable to enter. Across the street, reporters watched. Cameras pointed toward him. The same man who once controlled billions was now standing outside his own company. Then his phone received one final message from Isabella. Only one sentence. We need to talk. Adrian stared at the screen. For the first time since everything collapsed, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. But he didn't know if Isabella was calling to save him or to say goodbye forever. Adrian stared at the document. His eyes moved from the company logo to the signature at the bottom, then back again. No. His voice was barely a whisper. This isn't possible. Isabella remained silent. He picked up the paper with trembling hands. The name was clear. The signature was real. Valois International Trust, the same organization that had secretly saved his company 10 years earlier. The same organization he had never bothered to investigate. The same organization that had been protecting him from the beginning. Adrian looked at her. Your family owned part of Sterling Dynamics? Isabella shook her head. No, that is not what happened. Then what is this? She walked closer. The Valois Trust invested in your company. Yes, but the investment agreement had conditions. Adrian frowned. What conditions? Isabella looked down for a moment. One of them was that the founder would always maintain ethical control over the company. Another was that if serious financial misconduct was discovered, the trust had the legal right to protect its investment. Adrian slowly understood. You had the power to remove me. Yes. The answer was quiet, but it hit him hard. All these years, you could have taken control whenever you wanted. Isabella nodded. But I never wanted control. I wanted you to succeed. She looked at him. I believed you were a good man. Adrian looked away. The truth was becoming harder to accept. The woman he had treated like she was holding him back was the reason he had everything. The board removed me, he said. Yes. The investigation started because of you. Yes. You could destroy me. Isabella's expression changed. I don't want to destroy you. Then why are you doing this? Her eyes became serious. Because I cannot protect someone from the consequences of their own choices. The room became quiet. Adrian had no answer. For years he believed power meant never losing. Now he was learning something different. Real power was knowing you could destroy someone and choosing not to. Isabella walked back to the window. When we met, you had nothing. You had no company, no money, no influence. But you had ambition and kindness. You were the man who helped an old woman carry groceries even when you were late for an important meeting. Adrian remembered. A small smile almost appeared. I forgot about that. I didn't. She turned back. That was the man I fell in love with. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the man everyone applauded. The man who cared when nobody was watching. Adrian lowered his head. And I lost that person. Isabella didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. 3 weeks later, the world watched the biggest corporate battle of the year. Sterling Dynamics was no longer just a technology company. It had become a global story. Every news channel followed the investigation. Every investor waited for updates. The company was being rebuilt under new leadership, and at the center of everything was Isabella. Not because she wanted attention, because she had earned trust. Employees who once feared losing their jobs now received protection. The stolen funds were recovered. The executives involved were removed. The company began rebuilding, but Adrian was no longer inside the building. He spent his days in a small office rented across town. No assistants, no private elevator, no team waiting outside his door, just him. For the first time in years, he had time to think. One afternoon, he received a visitor, Tiffany. He looked surprised. "What are you doing here?" She stepped inside. She looked different. No designer clothes, no luxury handbag, no perfect image. Just a woman who had finally realized the life she chased was never real. "I wanted to talk." Adrian leaned back. "About what?" She looked around the small office. "I didn't expect this." "What?" "That we would both end up losing everything." Adrian gave a bitter smile. "You didn't lose everything." She looked at him. "You lost Isabella, and I lost the dream of becoming someone important." Silence followed. For the first time, they both understood something. They had both been chasing appearances, and they both paid the price. Tiffany stood. "I hope you find peace, Adrian." He looked surprised. "That's it?" She nodded. "That's it." She walked away. And Adrian didn't stop her, because he finally understood. Some people leave your life because they were never meant to stay. That evening, Isabella stood on the balcony of the Valois Palace. Paris lights filled the horizon. Lady Catherine approached. "Your Highness." Isabella turned. "Yes? The Queen wishes to speak with you." Isabella smiled. "About what?" Lady Catherine smiled back. "Your future." Isabella looked toward the city. For 10 years, she had hidden who she was. Now the world knew. But she had learned something important. A crown did not make someone powerful. Money did not make someone valuable. Character did. And somewhere far away, Adrian Sterling was finally learning the same lesson. 1 year later, the world had changed. But the biggest change was not in the newspapers, it was in the people. Adrian Sterling was no longer the man everyone recognized from magazine covers. He was no longer the billionaire who walked into rooms and expected everyone to stand. He had become something he never thought he would be. A man who listened, a man who cared, a man who understood that success meant nothing if you lost yourself along the way. His new company was much smaller, nothing compared to Sterling Dynamics at its peak, but every project had a purpose, every decision had meaning. And for the first time in his life, he enjoyed working, not because of money, not because of power, because he finally understood the reason he started building things in the first place, to make life better. Miento. Meanwhile, in France, Princess Isabella stood before thousands of people. The Valois Foundation had opened its largest education center yet, a place where young people from around the world could learn technology, medicine, and engineering. The cameras loved the moment. The world saw a princess, but the people inside the building saw something else. They saw a woman who remembered what it felt like to be underestimated. During the ceremony, a young girl approached Isabella. "Are you really a princess?" Isabella smiled. "Yes." The girl looked amazed. "Does that mean you always had everything?" Isabella knelt down. "No." The girl looked confused. "Why not?" "Because having a title doesn't mean life is easy. Everyone has difficult moments." The girl thought for a second. "Then what makes someone special?" Isabella smiled. "How they choose to act when nobody is watching." The girl smiled. And Isabella realized those words were the same lesson she had learned herself. That evening, Isabella received an unexpected letter. No official seal, no royal markings, just a simple envelope. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. It was from Adrian. She read the first line. "Dear Isabella, I don't know if I deserve your forgiveness. I don't know if I ever will. But I wanted to thank you, not for saving my company, not for saving my reputation, but for showing me who I had become." Isabella continued reading. "When I met you, I thought I needed someone who could make me look successful. I was wrong. I needed someone who reminded me what success actually meant. I lost you because I was chasing things that were never important, but losing you forced me to find myself again." At the bottom was one final sentence. "I hope you live the beautiful life you always deserved." Isabella folded the letter. She didn't cry. She didn't feel pain. She felt peace, because sometimes closure does not come from getting revenge. Sometimes it comes from knowing you survived. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some would say Adrian Sterling was the billionaire who lost a princess. Others would say Isabella Valud was the princess who defeated a billionaire. But those who knew the truth understood something deeper. This was never a story about money. It was never about a crown. It was never about revenge. It was about a man who forgot the value of the person beside him, and a woman who never forgot her own worth. Adrian thought he was leaving behind an ordinary wife. He thought he was choosing a better life, but he discovered the truth too late. The woman he underestimated was the woman who had been standing beside him the entire time. She wasn't waiting for someone to save her. She had always been powerful. She had simply chosen love over a throne. And when the world finally learned who Isabella truly was, the biggest surprise was not that she was royalty. The biggest surprise was that after everything, she was still kind, because true power does not need to prove itself. It simply shines. And that was the story of Princess Isabella Valois, the woman who lost a husband but found herself again.